Hello, everybody. Welcome to Storytime from the Milledgeville Public Library of Illinois. My phone is falling over. There we go. The story we have for you today is one that was collected in Central Europe by the Grimm's brothers, by Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm. And this is the story of 12 sisters who really liked to dance. This is the story of the shoes that were danced to pieces. Once long ago, there was a king. He had 12 daughters. They were quite beautiful, and they really liked dancing. And so he had them made for them very, very pretty dancing slippers that were very nice to dance in and were very pretty, as a princess should have very pretty shoes. But he had to make an awful lot of dancing shoes. And the king realized that he was making new dancing shoes. He was ordering new dancing shoes for the princesses a lot. So he started to really pay attention. Now, these 12 princesses happened to be very, very good friends, all of them. And so they all slept in one big room with all 12 of their beds in it, and all 12 of their cupboards with all of their clothes in it. And at night, the king decided that he would lock them in because something must be going on. If they were using up all of these shoes, they must be sneaking out somehow and somehow getting out and going dancing or something. And so he began locking the door. But that didn't seem to work. He was still going through just as many dancing shoes every single night. He needed to make more dancing shoes for the princesses every morning. When they would wake up, they would put out these dancing shoes that had holes in them. Now, we think of shoes, and we think of shoes that are pretty strong. But dancing slippers were not quite so sturdy on the bottom then as they are now. And so the princesses would dance through their slippers every single night. There were holes in the bottom of the shoes, and they weren't useful anymore. Well, the king decided he needed to get to the bottom of this matter, and so he called his daughters before him. But they would not tell him where they were going to dance. And so he decided he needed help. So he did something that kings have done for years and years and years. He wrote a proclamation, and he proclaimed that whoever could find out where his 12 daughters were dancing all night long to wear out their slippers, even when they were locked in their bedroom all night, whoever could find that out would get one of the princesses as his wife. He could pick the princess he wanted and would be king after the old king died. For he didn't have a son to be the king. So one of his daughters would have to marry a man who would be king when the old king died. Well, the king thought about it for a bit before he sent out the proclamation, and then he realized that perhaps he should give the men a specific amount of time for them to figure out where the princesses were going. And he knew his daughters were clever, so he decided to give whoever came to find out where the princesses would go 3 days and 3 nights to find out. Well, the first prince came, and every night he fell asleep, and he did not find out where the princesses had gone. The king was not happy, and he sent the prince away. And the next prince came, and every night he fell asleep, and he did not find out where the princesses had gone. And suddenly the king began to think this was not such a good plan, because these princes kept coming, and they ate a lot, and they drank a lot, and then they fell asleep every night, and they never found anything out, and the king got nothing out of all of the food and the drink that the princes ate and drank. So he decided to add something onto the proclamation. And now he said that if whoever came, it didn't have to be a prince, it could be somebody else, whoever came to find out where the princesses went, if they did not find out by the end of the 3 days and 3 nights, they would lose their head. He would kill them. Well, the next prince came, and the king made sure to tell him if he did not figure it out in 3 days, then he would lose his head. And the prince said, "Oh no, it's all right, your majesty, I'm very good at finding things out." But every night he fell asleep. And at the end of 3 days and 3 nights, he did not know how the princesses managed to dance their shoes to pieces. And so the king had him killed. And several others came too. And they didn't manage to find out where the princesses danced their shoes to pieces, and the king had them killed too. Well, as you can imagine, with that many people dying, people didn't really try to figure out where the princesses were going quite as much. Well, during the time that all this was happening, there were soldiers in the king's army that would go out to fight battles and come back, and sometimes they got hurt. And one poor particular soldier, this particular soldier that is in our story, didn't have a whole lot of money, and he had gotten hurt, and he could no longer fight. And so he began to wander the roads of the kingdom, hoping that he would find somewhere that he could fit in and maybe find a job and a home and someplace that he could get food all of the time and he could earn a living. Well, as he was wandering one day, he came close to the capital city where the king lived. And as he came close to the city, he came into a small village just outside the city, and he ran into an old woman there. And the old woman looked at him up and down, and she said, "Well, where are you going, soldier lad?" And he said, "Well, I don't know. I'm trying to find my place in the world." And in a joking manner, he said, "Perhaps I will go to the palace and try to find out what is happening with the 12 princesses." And the old woman looked at him and she said, "Well, that is not such a hard thing to find out. I have some advice for you. Would you like it?" Well, the soldier was a little surprised, for you see, he really had been joking. But if the old woman said that it wasn't so hard to find out, being a king would be a pretty good job, and he would definitely have food and clothes, and he'd have a castle to live in, so it would work for him. And so he asked the old woman, he said, "Yes, I would like the advice if you wouldn't mind giving it to me." She said, "I do not mind at all. Do not drink the wine and pretend to go to sleep." Do not drink the wine and pretend to go to sleep. I should not drink any wine? She said, "No, do not drink any wine at night and pretend to go to sleep." "All right," said the soldier. "Well, I think I can do that." And the old woman said, "Very well then, I have a gift for you that may help you on your way." And she took off her own cloak, and she, out of a bag, she took a cloak out of the bag, and she said, "Here, when you wear this, it will make you invisible, and it will help you to find out where the princesses are going." "Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, grandmother. I appreciate it very much," said the soldier. And he took the cloak, and he tucked it into his own bag, and he decided going to the castle sounded like as good of a place to go as any, and so he did. He went to the castle, and he presented himself, and he said, "I would like to find out where the 12 princesses are going." And the men at the gate warned him that if he did not find out, he would lose his head. And he said that he thought he would try just the same. And so they took him in to see the king. And the king welcomed him, and they sat down to supper, and oh, it was a feast such as the soldier had not had in many a day. But he remembered what the old lady said, and so when they offered him wine, he said he would prefer to just have water. And then they took him to his room. Now, the room that he had was right next door to the one that all of the 12 princesses slept in, and they told him that the princesses had been told that they had to leave the door open so that he could watch them at all times and find out where they were going at night to dance their slippers to bits. So the soldier said, "Well, all right, I think I can do this." They said to him, "Good, this is your first night. Watch well." And then they left. And the 12 princesses came into bed, and the oldest princess came to the soldier and she said, "Here, I have a glass of spiced wine for you. I noticed that you didn't drink any at supper." And he said, "Oh, well, thank you very much, princess," because of course he didn't want to be impolite. And he thought it might be better if he didn't try to argue with the princesses, if he was going to try to find out where they were going. And so when the princess turned her back, he took the glass of wine and very quickly he poured it out on the other side of his bed into a little hole in the wall, and it slid down underneath the hole in the wall and ran out into the garden. And so then he pretended to be drinking the last of the wine, and then he gave the cup back to the princess and he thanked her very kindly. And then he laid down on the bed. And after he had laid there for a little while, he pretended to begin snoring. Well, as soon as he began snoring, the princesses began giggling. And after he'd been snoring for a little while, he heard a flurry of noise in the princess's room. And when he was laying there, he cracked his eyes open just a little bit. Have you ever done that? You're laying there in your sleep, you're pretending to sleep, and then you open your eye just a little bit so that you can see what's happening. Well, that's what the soldier did. He opened his eyes just a little bit so that he could see, and what the princesses were doing was flying about the room, opening cabinets and pulling out beautiful dresses and putting them on and putting their hair up and making themselves very pretty and putting on jewelry and putting on their brand new dancing slippers. Wow, the soldier was a little surprised because he knew the door was locked and they weren't going to be getting out, but all right, they looked like they were definitely going to a ball. They were getting all dressed up in their prettiest dresses and their prettiest jewelry. And so the soldier waited and he watched from beneath his eyelids. And when all of the princesses were all dressed and all ready to go, they all lined up right near the oldest princess's bed. And she reached out and she tapped her bed 3 times. And suddenly the bed sank into the floor, and it became the first step in a long stairway winding down. And the princesses began to walk down the stairs. Now, as soon as the youngest princess disappeared down the stairs, the soldier jumped up and he grabbed the cloak that he had laid next to his bed and he threw it on and he hurried down the stairs behind them. Because, of course, now he was invisible. They couldn't see him. And he was hurrying so quickly that he went just a little bit too fast. And as he was hurrying down the stairs, he caught up to the princesses and accidentally he stepped on the hem of the youngest princess's dress. And she shrieked and she said to her sister, "Someone has grabbed my dress. There's someone else here." But the oldest princess said to her, "Don't be silly. You caught your dress on a nail is all. Goodness, the noise you're making. Come along." And they continued on down the staircase. Now that the soldier was being very careful now not to step on anybody's dress. Well, when they came out of the staircase, they came out a door, and they came into a wood that was so beautiful and so shiny. Every tree seemed to shine with its own light. And the soldier stopped for a moment just to see what it was that made the trees shine. And what he realized is every single tree in the wood was made out of silver. Well, he thought, this would be a good sign to show the king, to show him what he had seen. And so he reached up and he broke a twig off of one of the trees. Well, it made such a loud crack that the youngest princess, who of course was in front of the soldier, jumped and squeaked a little bit. She said, sisters, did you hear that? What was that?" And her sister said, "Don't be silly. It was just the princes firing a gun in welcome of us. They know we're coming. They must have seen us from the shore." Well, the youngest princess wasn't entirely happy with that, but she went along with her sisters, and they continued. And when they came out of the wood that was all made of silver, there was a little meadow, and then there was another wood, and this wood seemed to glow. And when the soldier stopped to look at it, he saw that every tree was made of gold. And so again, he broke a twig off of one of the trees and he put it in his pocket. And again, it made a very loud sound, and the youngest princess was very scared, but her sisters assured her it must just be their princes firing a gun in salute. And so they came out of the golden wood, and they crossed a little meadow, and they came into another wood that sparkled and shone so much it was a little dizzying. And when the soldier stopped and he looked at the trees, he found that they were all made of diamonds. And he reached up and he broke off a twig. And again it made a loud noise. And again the youngest princess was frightened. And again her sisters told her it was just a gun salute. Well, when they came out of the wood made of diamonds, they came on the shore of a lake. And the soldier could see that there were 12 little boats lined up along the lake with 12 young men dressed just like princes in those boats. And each of the princesses began to get into the boat, the eldest first, and then the next eldest, and then the next, and the next, and the next, all the way down to the youngest. And the soldier was so busy looking around that he completely missed the boats. The girls all rode off without him. Well, he stayed on the shore and he just watched where they were going. Where are they going? He thought perhaps if they were going to the other side of the lake, he could just go around it or something. But what he found is they did not go to the other side of the lake. Instead, they went to the middle of the lake, where there was a great big island that had a very large house on it that shone and glowed with so many lights all lit up. Well, the soldier watched, and as the princesses and their boats landed on the shore, he could see that they went into the castle. And as soon as they arrived in that big castle on the island, the music started. And he guessed the princesses were probably dancing. But he knew that even with those 3 twigs, he did not have enough information to go to the king the next day. And so he sat on the shore and he waited for the princesses to come back. And when they did, he hurried ahead of them up through the diamond wood and the gold wood and the silver wood and back up the staircase. And when they came out of the staircase with their shoes all danced to pieces, the soldier was lying in his bed snoring. And the oldest sister said to all of her other sisters, "You see, he's just like the others. He's so silly. He drank the wine and now he's asleep, and he's not a danger to us. Go to sleep, everyone." And so the sisters all went to sleep. Well, the next day, the soldier enjoyed talking to some of the princesses and walking about the royal gardens and exploring the royal library. And that night, after a very good dinner, he went to his room again. And again the oldest princess came with a glass of wine, but this time the soldier was ready. He had tied a sponge just underneath his chin, right inside the edge of his shirt, which was red. And when the princess handed him the wine, he pretended to drink it, but really he poured it out the side of the cup into the sponge. And then he gave the cup back to the princess, and he lay down on the bed. And again, after a little while, he began to snore. And the princesses got up, and they got themselves all dressed in their pretty dresses and their good jewelry, and did their hair. And the eldest princess tapped her bed 3 times, and it sank down and became the staircase. This time, the soldier knew that he needed to not be distracted, looking around and looking at all of the trees. And so he followed the princesses down the stairs and through the 3 woods. And this time, he managed to climb into the last boat with the youngest princess. And as they rowed across the lake, the prince commented to her that the boat seemed heavier than usual, for he could not keep up with the other boats. They were going to be a little bit late to the dance. And the princess said, "Oh, well, it's rather warm today. Perhaps that's the problem." And when they got to the shore, the soldier jumped out of the boat and he followed the princesses and their princes up into the castle. And he saw what was happening there. It was a grand ball. There was a banquet laid out on one side for anyone who might be hungry, and plenty of wine and other fun things to drink for people who might be thirsty. And there was a wonderful band, and they played beautiful dancing music, and each prince danced with his princess all night long. They danced and they danced and they took a break and they had some food and they danced some more and they had some drinks. Oh, it was wonderful. They danced so much that eventually, they wore out their dancing shoes. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning when they finally wore out their shoes. And the soldier went down to the shore with the princesses, and this time he got into the eldest daughter's boat, the eldest princess's boat, and he rowed across the shore, and he hurried up the stairs, and he was in his bed snoring when the princesses came up the stairs. Well, the next day, he explored the gardens again and the library and talked to more of the princesses and had a little chat with the king. And that night, after supper, again the eldest princess gave him the cup of wine, and he poured it into the sponge under his chin, and then he followed them down the stairs. This time, he decided he didn't just want to watch all of the dancing, he was going to have some fun himself. And so this time, when the princesses were dancing in the grand ballroom in the grand palace in the middle of the lake, the soldier, even though he was invisible, he took each one of them and danced with each one of them, and they were a little startled by that, as you might imagine. And when he got thirsty, he thought it would be safest to drink the wine that the princesses themselves were drinking, for clearly that wine was not going to make anyone sleepy. And so he would make sure that he was very careful, and he would sneak in and take their cup and drink all the wine, and then when the princess reached for it to drink out of it, it was empty. It was very surprising and very startling, and the youngest princess was very uneasy about all of this, but her sisters told her that she was just worrying for nothing. Just as the party was beginning to wind down, the soldier decided that perhaps he should have a little something from this palace to show the king too. He already had the 3 twigs from the 3 forests, but perhaps he should have something from the palace as well. And so when the eldest princess set down her wine cup empty, he picked it up and he stuck it in his pocket, and he took it back with him. And so this time, when the princesses got back to their room, he was waiting in the bed, snoring as usual. The next morning, the king summoned the soldier, and he said, "Soldier, you have had your 3 days and your 3 nights. Do you know where my daughters are going to dance their slippers to bits?" And the soldier said, "Well, yes, your majesty, actually I do. You see, there is an enchanted land that they can get to through their bedroom. Your eldest daughter taps her bed 3 times and it disappears into the floor, and there's a staircase there. And they go down the stairs and they go through 3 sets of wood. There is one wood in which all the trees are made of silver. I took this twig from that wood, your majesty." And he gave the silver twig to the king. "And the next wood is all made of gold." And he gave that twig to the king. "And the third is made of diamonds." And he gave the twig made of diamonds to the king. And then he said, when they get through those 3 woods, then they go to the edge of the lake, and there are 12 princes there, to put them in 12 little boats and row them across to the middle of the lake, where there's a grand palace in this underground kingdom. And they dance all night in that palace. "And, your majesty, I brought you something from the palace as well." And he took the cup out and he gave the cup to the king. Well, the king was quite surprised to hear all of this news about an enchanted kingdom underneath the ground that his daughters were getting to through their bedroom. And so he summoned his 12 daughters to him. And he said, "My daughters, the soldier has told me quite an odd story." And he had the soldier tell the story again. And he showed his daughters the 3 twigs and the cup from the underground kingdom. And then his daughters knew that they couldn't lie. They needed to tell their father everything. And so they did. They told their father the honest truth. And they admitted that they had indeed been going and dancing with these 12 princes every single night. And that's how their dancing shoes were getting worn out. And the king said, "Very well. This is good that you have finally told me the truth. And soldier, I promised that whoever figured this out would be able to marry one of my daughters. Which of the 12 would you like?" And the soldier, well, he had taken time to talk to all of the 12 sisters. And he said, "Your Majesty, I am not a young man. I think perhaps the eldest daughter and I would be well suited to each other." And so the 2 of them were married. And the underground kingdom, well, once the secret of it was told, it just melted away and disappeared, and the 12 princes with it. And eventually, the other 11 sisters found very good princes that they were married to and had their own kingdoms. And when the old king died, the soldier and his princess became the king and queen, and they were very good king and queen indeed. And that is the story of the shoes that were danced to pieces. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you will join us again on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Central Daylight Time here on the Milledgeville Public Library of Illinois Facebook page. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.